Hi there, my name is Tom from Vape Club, and today we're going to be taking a closer look at eLiquid. The idea behind this video is to give those that don't already have a good idea a better understanding of eLiquid without necessarily having to break out the chemistry set. So, jumping straight in, there are 4 main ingredients for eLiquid. You have nicotine, provided you're not using a 0mg. You have flavorings, but the 2 ingredients that we're going to look at in more detail today are PG and VG, which stand for propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin. So those are our 4 main ingredients: nicotine, flavorings, VG and PG. Nicotine makes complete sense. You are using an e-cigarette, generally speaking, because you want some nicotine, generally speaking. So it makes sense that nicotine would be in the e-liquid. Flavorings, again, makes sense because you want to enjoy an e-liquid and the flavor is important for enjoyment. But why PG and why VG? What is it about these 2 things that makes them good or useful when it comes to creating e-liquid? To better understand this, we're going to break down in a bit more detail both PG and VG so you can understand what they have about them or what properties they have to make them useful. Firstly, looking at PG in a bit more detail, PG is thin or runny in its consistency, kind of like water. Therefore, it's used to dissolve or carry flavorings, and it's used to dissolve or dilute nicotine, more often than not. Along with these 2 main properties which make it useful for producing e-liquid, it's also a little bit responsible for the throat hit you get when vaping. And despite its slightly strange sounding name, PG or propylene glycol, is actually rather common. You will find in such things, for example, as the inhalers that people would use for asthma. So it's been around for a long time and we've used it for a long time. So that's PG. VG, or vegetable glycerin, is again very common, has been around a long time and is used an awful lot in the food industry and appears in products such as cough medicine. It's almost the opposite to PG. It's very thick and viscous, more like a gel than a liquid. So on its own, it has no discernible throat hit, a very slightly sweet taste, but its main responsibility or job is to produce the vapor or clouds, as they are sometimes termed, when you're using your e-cigarette. The 2 in combination are generally used to produce e-liquid at varying ratios. So, ratios. What are they exactly? Why do they exist? So a ratio will show you or describe to you the makeup of your e-liquid in terms of how much VG or how much PG is in the liquid. If you have a quick look at the Vape Club website, you'll see that all of our liquids display the amount of VG in the liquid. You won't see a complete sum, as it were, up to 100%, unless of course it is 100% VG liquid. But the way it works is if it says 60% VG, you can assume safely that the remaining 40% is PG. Why might you have different ratios? Some people prefer chucking clouds, as it were, producing large amounts of vapor, large volumes of vapor, and to do this, you would generally use a sub-ohm device with a high VG liquid. Some people prefer a good, strong kick of flavor. They're not interested in blowing clouds. They want to get the nicotine that they require, and they want to taste good when they do it. And they may use a different type of device, which is more mouth to lung. I cannot describe via the camera or show you what the different taste is like between high VG or high PG liquids, but what we can do is quickly show you the difference in vapor production between your typical high VG or high PG liquid and the devices that you'll generally use them on. So, with me here, I have an iCare Mini. This is generally a mouth-to-lung device and it has a 1.1 ohm coil with a non-named 50/50 liquid in here. I'm just going to vape on this quickly so you can kind of see what kind of vapor it produces. So this is the Troll RDA, and in here we have a sort of 0.25 ohm coil with an 80% VG liquid. Just by way of comparison, let's just see how this compares. You see there's a slight increase there in vapor production with the higher VG liquid and the higher output style equipment. So there you have it in terms of the difference in vapor production at the very least between high VG and high PG. What I will say is on the Vape Club website, we recommend that no one uses a sub-ohm device with a liquid that's higher than 6mg nicotine strength. Now, the reason for this is that sub-ohm devices, obviously, as you've seen, output a lot of vapor, and the more nicotine you put in there, the much more powerful the throat hit will be. As we mentioned, PG is responsible for a small portion of throat hit, but nicotine is very much responsible for throat hit. This moves nicely on to nicotine. How do you choose which nicotine strength, especially when you're first starting out? The device you choose to start with will have an impact on what you can use, We don't recommend, if you're using a sub-ohm device, that you use 6 mg or above. But what does 6 mg even mean? In very, very simple terms, there are 6 milligrams of nicotine per milliliter of eLiquid. So for every milliliter you have from your 30 milliliter bottle, for example, there are 6 milligrams of nicotine per milliliter. But how does that translate to you deciding which nicotine strength is the right one for you? Generally speaking, and unfortunately there are only generalizations, everyone is different and everyone has different preferences. So we can only advise on a general scale or scope. But the high end of nicotine is 20 mg. At the other end of the scale, and excluding the 0 mg liquids, which obviously contain no nicotine at all, the lowest strength nicotine liquid you can get at the moment that I'm aware of is a 1.5 mg. So 1.5 milligrams of nicotine per milliliter of eLiquid. Another way of looking at nicotine strength in liquids is as a percentage terms. So looking at the 6 mg again, if we're not referring to it as 6 milligrams per milliliter of the eLiquid, we can refer to it as a percentage. So this liquid here, 60 ml bottle, as a 6 mg, the nicotine would make up 0.6% of the liquid, the overall volume. There's your spectrum, there's your scale. At the high end of the spectrum, you have your 18 mg and 20 mg. And at the other end of the spectrum, you have your 0 mg with no nicotine at all, and things like even 1.5, where you have 1.5 milligrams of nicotine per milliliter of eLiquid. Now, depending on how much you smoke, depending on the device you're looking to use, where do you go in that spectrum? Well, if you're a heavy smoker and you're planning on using an ego-style device or a mouth-to-lung style device, with a coil that has an ohms rating of above 1, it's safe to say 12 to 18 mg is a fair place to start. If you're not a very heavy smoker, you have options like 6 mg. There is no correct answer or absolute, this is how you should do it, I'm afraid. And it is, at least at the very beginning, trial and error. One thing that should be borne in mind is vaping is less efficient at delivering nicotine to your body. So we'll need to vape for longer than you would if you were smoking a cigarette. If you can smoke a cigarette in 3 minutes, you'll probably want to vape for about 6. See, there is no hard and fast rule in terms of getting it right. What works for me wouldn't necessarily work for the next person. What you should aim to do is try as many different options as you can and aim to keep trying. If you find a particular ratio doesn't work for you, it might be better trying a different ratio. Maybe nicotine strength, you try an 18, it's a bit strong, go down to a 12. Or even flavor. Flavor plays a really large role, I find, for me. Obviously, you don't want to vape something that you don't like the taste of. So flavor is a very important factor, and finding your flavor, or ADV, all day vape, is a quest that every vapor goes on at the beginning and sometimes multiple times throughout their vaping journey. So the main thing is perseverance. Keep trying different things. One of them will work for you. Hopefully, this video has given you some understanding or more understanding in terms of what eLiquid actually is, what goes into it, and what you need to look for when it comes to things like nicotine and ratios when you're deciding which eLiquids are for you. If you have any questions, please do leave them in the comment section and we will get back to you. Likewise, if you like what you see, not me, but the actual video and content, please feel free to subscribe to our channel as we will be releasing more of these in the not too distant future. Again, I'm Tom from Vape Club. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.